Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Rive, and I'm your host for today. I'm also the president of the HDI Central Florida chapter. We've got a very special event today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Liz, can you see the agenda?
I can.
Outstanding. Okay, well, we're going to start off with some HDI news. It'll take about 7 minutes, and then we're very privileged to have Alan Nance present to us on experience management and creating XLAs. We'll then open it up to Q&A and then have a wrap up. I'd like to start off first by thanking our sponsors that make events like this possible, both our virtual and in-person events. Robert Half, Talent Solutions, is a national sponsor and also a sponsor of our Premier Awards that we will be talking about in a little while. We also have Splash Top and Team Dynamics. And in Central Florida, we also have Easy Vista, FMX Solutions, and Modus Create. Thank you so much, sponsors. In terms of upcoming events, 1 month from today is Service Management World, a great event with great training and has the highest discount I've ever seen trying to maximize audience acquisition. That's $800. That the hotel discount at the Disney Coronado Springs ends today. So if you haven't signed up, today would be a very good time to make your reservations. It's also not too early to think about Support World Live that's coming up next May 3rd through 7th at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. Always a wonderful event of thought leaders and great for professional networking. Each one of you is welcome to join any and all virtual and in-person events that HDI local chapters conducts across the United States. Here's a QR code for accessing that schedule. We also have a YouTube channel, Bites and Banter, with some very interesting and informative interviews with industry thought leaders, and that's available via that QR code. There's also opportunities for further networking in terms of monthly coffee chats, as well as members of HDI and ICMI sharing ideas. Included is the QR code for the November event with Real Talk on AI, what's working, what is hype, and what's next in support. We have some big training updates at HDI. We have redesigned the Support Center Manager, Support Center Director, and Support Center Analyst courses. So if you're interested in any of those courses, please make sure you're enrolling in the most current one. The Certified Instructor program has been redesigned and enhanced. So that's also available for you. And then there are brand new courses in 2026, the Support Center Quality Workshop and the Coaching for Service Excellence. In terms of experience management, very relevant to our topic today, the great HDI instructor and HDI Top 25 thought leader, Rayanne Bruno, is personally conducting the training November 16th through the 18th at Service Management World. Experience and XLA Foundation is the first level of certification, and it provides a full understanding of that experience optimization framework. You're able to enroll in both the conference and the pre-conference training, or simply the training itself, if that is your exclusive area of interest. In addition, we also offer, as HDI is an accredited XLA Institute trainer, the Experience and XLA Practitioner certification, and that is a 2-day course. It is currently offered online, but as an option can be provided on site. And I just happened to speak to Rayanne about that last night. So these are great courses. This is the course outline, and all this is available online under the HDI training catalog. In addition, for there are free community HDI memberships. There's also the paid HDI chapter membership of $149 that entitles you to the $800 service management world discount and discounts at all HDI conferences and training. And we've introduced a $29 student membership as well. So please spread the word. Good news. Our HDI award nominations have been extended through October 31st. This is my favorite time of year when we get an opportunity to recognize our staff, our colleagues, our management that set a great example for the rest of the service and support organization. There are many awards that are available, and I have gone through the process of nominating, and they've made it very efficient, and your staff colleagues and management will greatly appreciate it. It's a real motivator to the whole team. Earlier this year in the photograph, I had the privilege of visiting Orange County Public Schools and awarding Chrissy Hoffwoot the Best Service and Support Analyst Award. On her far right is Bob Schrader, who won the previous year. They certainly have a culture of devoted, passionate experience management and customer support. And it's such a privilege to meet with them and their leadership team. So as I mentioned, we're privileged to have Alan Nance, the co-founder of the XLA Institute and XLA Collab. He is a globally recognized authority in experience management and service optimization. He's had senior roles at Ernst & Young, ING Bank, HP, and other organizations. He is an HDI top 25 industry thought leader and has been inducted into our ITSM Hall of Fame. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Alan Nance.
Well, thank you very much, Jim. And I can definitely second your recommendation to spend time with Rayanne Bruno. She is absolutely excellent. Of course, most of you will know her because she's ubiquitous within HDI. But especially in the experience front, she's done some amazing work with our team and for our team. So that's absolutely brilliant. Okay, now I am going to share this presentation. I saw a couple of people who are on the call who probably could give this presentation even better than I can. So I hope I'm interesting enough for everybody. I wanted to start off by talking about how the experience economy changes everything. Because this conversation, many of you are there. You get it, you understand it. But a lot of people, even in the service management community, keep saying, well, if we just, do ITIL 4, then we've got it covered. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time explaining why that is probably not the case. And the fact that you are doing experience management and you have ITIL 4, we shouldn't put those two things together. So yes, there are people like myself who've grown up through the ITSM world and have adapted to experience economy, but it is a very different animal, and I want to take you through that. And my ultimate goal, and some of you may have seen this before, is this is all about you becoming the guardians of the human experience of digital products. I firmly believe that's where it is. I actually did a presentation this morning for a healthcare institute, a government healthcare institute. And the only thing I changed was talking about digital healthcare products. But it's basically the same thing. I think a lot of people believe we're supporting services, and that's why we're called service management. That's not how the world outside sees us. The world outside sees us as the people that deliver digital products, and when they don't work so well, we support them or we help them optimize their use of it. And so I want us to think that way. And I'm going to add something that I haven't done before today, which illustrates that a little bit. So I'd like to talk about a couple of things like the experience economy and why it's important to the CEO and why it's important to the CIO. And then we'll talk a little bit about XLAs as well. So many of you will have seen this because this is like the standard opening for almost every experience management presentation. People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And this is immediately the difference between an SLA and an XLA. Am I okay?
I completely agree. Have you shared your screen yet, Alan?
Oh, is it not coming up? It is. It should be shared. Oh,
I can see it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
you can see it or you can't.
I can.
Oh,
Excellent.
thank goodness.
Proceed. Thank you.
Okay. And this is the difference between the SLA and the XLA right here. So an SLA is about saying what you do and doing what you say and measuring against it. The XLA is much more about how do you leave people after they've had the encounter with your product, your service, or you know. Now, what makes this slightly more complicated as an experience versus a service is that for XLAs and for experience management, it's not even what actually happened, but it's how people remember it. So memories are the hallmark of experience, and that gives us an extra challenge because people's memories are faulty. And what they tell you that they remember may not actually be what occurred. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on, because that is the reason that we have this XMO concept and the XLA design method. So what are the principles of the experience economy? And I think the first thing to understand is in the experience economy, experience is the core offering. You know, when I worked at HP, we had a services business, but the services business was wrapped around hardware, was wrapped around outsourcing, was wrapped around networks. In the experience economy, experience is the core offering. And so the first thing you've got to be good at is designing memorable, valuable interactions with your audience. And the other thing is, if you do that, you will differentiate your brand and prevent price wars. And some of you may well work for a managed service provider or a global systems integrator, and you realize there's been this race to the bottom of optimization and how much things can cost because we haven't managed to differentiate the experience and what that's worth. What we also know, and everybody can talk about Apple, but great experiences build strong customer loyalty. When you have a great experience, and I don't know if any of you caught our live event last week when we had the senior vice president of NBC Universal talking to us, and he was talking about how they spent, I think it was $3,000 to get a $25,000 pen to somebody who had left it at the hotel. And that when they worked out what that did to their customer loyalty, it translated to millions of dollars of revenue over a number of years. The other thing is experiences create unique, sustainable business value. The more you focus on experiences, the more you're going to understand what you're really good at and what differentiates you. And then the last thing is, what you're going to find is anytime you try to create experiences, you nearly always have to create an ecosystem. And so the ecosystem to provide an experience will also help you to drive business growth. Now, this, I don't know if people have seen this diagram before, but the thing I'm trying to show you here is that the journey we're on is not a fad. It's not like cloud or data analytics or, heaven forbid, AI. This is just something that's happening over hundreds of years. We started off with commodity, And in the commodity time, we would set sail to foreign lands and we would take their beans and their herbs and whatever, and we would bring them back and they would be commodities. And they would be sold in big bags and people would have to store them themselves. After a while, that became consumerized and people, would buy products. And then what you also saw was people saying, why, instead of making the coffee at home, why don't I meet friends and I'd go to coffee shops? Coffee shops have been around for well over 100 years. But it wasn't until companies like Starbucks and Costa and Joe and the Juice and a whole bunch of them said, you know what? Having coffee is not about coffee. And it's very interesting because the CEO who was running Starbucks before the current CEO, he really did believe that Starbucks was about coffee. And when they just focused on coffee and optimizing the process around coffee, what they found was that the customers stayed away. Starbucks is about the experience of the third place. It's about meeting friends. It's about finding a place to study. It's about meeting the family. It's about taking the kids after soccer to get something to drink. And so the Starbucks specialty coffee shops are really the first indication we see of somebody taking through that whole development chain. Now, for each of these economies, we develop different management standards and metrics to survive and be successful in them. When you're running a business in the commodity economy, your metrics are going to be around standardization. You don't want bad coffee this week, good coffee next week. You want predictability, and that's around yield. That's around when you're going to get it. You want to focus on efficiency because commodities always go for the lowest price at the market. You want to focus on transportation and you want to avoid any form of spoilage. Once you move out of the commodity economy and you go into the product economy, then you see the shift that we're now worried about output volume. We're worried about productivity. We're worried about lean and defects and waste. We're worried about the supply chain, and we start to introduce things like technical personas. And technical personas are people like power users, administrative users. And our business is measured on KPIs and ROI. Now, what you also see in this diagram is that the commodity economy doesn't die, it simply gets absorbed into the product economy. And this principle goes on and on as we move through. So even though the product economy had its own management styles, its own metrics for success, you can still find a focus on standardization, on efficiency, on spoilage and waste. Around the 1980s, some of you, and certainly I, lived through the transition from the manufacturing, the product economy to the service economy. And for many parts of the world, it was brutal. When I was living in the UK, I was still at school, but we were shutting down coal mines. We were shutting down steel factories. We were shutting down entire communities that had lived off of those. The story of Allentown comes to mind. But what came into place was the service economy. And the service economy introduced new things to us. The concept of process, throughput, service level agreements, the time value of money, sourcing ecosystems, and of course, our good friends CSAT and NPS. Again, even though we were in and still are, for many of us, in the service economy, we also have KPIs, we also have ROIs, and we still have standardization. As we've moved into the experience economy, which starts somewhere around 2003, it depends on what you take as the biggest indicator. Some people take the ubiquity of internet, others take the iPhone and the App Store as the defining moment. But what's clear is since the 2000s, we've been in the experience economy, and that also has its own areas of concern. Ecosystems, journey maps, design thinking, a focus on flow. There's a lot of discussion about value flow, experience personas. There's a white paper coming out next week that I've written with a chap called Mark Franzen from a company called SEC. And we're looking at the evolution of personas and how we are now in experience personas. And of course, we have the experience level agreement. Experience level agreement is symbolic as the service level agreement was for the service economy. Now, why is this important to understand? Because this isn't a fad, this is a development, it's an evolution. And what we see is that everything that we have done to get ourselves here remains relevant. So everything you've done to become a great service management professional remains relevant as you go into the experience economy. And I think that's one of the exciting things. People aren't being replaced, they're being embellished, they're giving an opportunity to build on what they're already good at. Now, why is experience important for the board? And there's a number of reasons why it's on the agenda. One is we're in a multi-generational workforce, and that means that the services we design, the experiences we design, the products we design have to be suitable for a wide range, probably the widest range of workforce that we've ever had at one time. Because Gen Alpha, Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X all have very, very specific needs for what they expect from technology and what they expect from services. The second reason is specific talent scarcity. One of the case studies we do is a case study for a very, very high-end domestic appliance company. The most important person in that company is their designers, and you know who they are because they've come up with the most innovative designs for hair dryers, for air conditioners, I'm trying to think what else they've done, but almost everything you can think of, they have redesigned. And there's probably no high-end bathroom that they are not providing you with your hand dryer. But for them, they have to make sure that those people are productive and that they're loyal, and because these people are in high demand by Apple, by Google, by Meta and others. So that's another reason. A third reason, which obviously crept in after the pandemic, is flexible ways of working. It has something to do with multi-generational workforce, but it's a little bit more complicated. We're working with all types of people working from all sites of locations. And if you're in the United States, there's very, very little chance you're working for a company where everybody can get together in a single office. The next one is the complex sourcing of ecosystems. Many large companies source part of their capability offshore, nearshore, or at least from a system integrator or an MSP. It could be a local one. Those people have a culture, and those people bring their culture to work. And when their culture comes into our culture, we need to understand how to deal with it. Another big one, and some of you will know, one of the biggest clients for HDI and for us is T-Mobile. T-Mobile has done a lot of merger acquisition and spin out. And of course, people are a big part of it. So setting up the onboarding process, setting up the experience level agreements for people coming to T-Mobile and people at T-Mobile receiving people is a big deal. Because you want those people to feel at home, you want those people to be productive, and you don't want any experience anxiety from people not understanding what's going on or not feeling comfortable with these changes as they occur, because they're often large, significant, and strategic. The last one is what I'm adding, and I'm calling it I Know Me, which is AI Know Me. In the sociology, we have a concept called anomy. And anomy happens when large groups of people become disconnected from society. And the really dark side of anomy is you see increases in suicide rates and mental health issues. So anomy is not good. And anomy can occur when things are going very, very well. So for instance, if you're moving from a product economy to a service economy and it's booming, you can still have people who feel very, very uncomfortable in that society. Now with AI, I feel that AI needs to be treated as a major source of anomy. Not because it's all bad, but because people define themselves as lost. and they're trying to hang on to what it means. And every day when you open up the newspaper and you hear this is going to be great for you, or 1,000 jobs are going to be lost because of this, it doesn't help. It doesn't help you feel good about yourself, your family, your future prospects. So I think I Know Me is another one the board needs to be measuring, especially if you have people today that may be affected by AI, but are still need to be productive and contributing for some time to come, maybe years to come. They need to understand how it all fits together. But why does the CIO care about this? Much more practical. And Gardner tells us by 2028, more than 70% of outsourced services will include XLAs. That's up from 40% in 2025. 40% of digital workplace sourcing contracts will include contractual XLAs. And while organizations most commonly use XLAs in the outsourced digital workplace, you can implement them anywhere. And you can see this coming out of our State of XLA study from last year, that the big blocks are customer experience and employee experience, but more and more you're seeing people become very specific and zoning in to very, very specific experience personas, like patient experience. Some of you may have been lucky enough to follow a presentation from the University of Alaska, Anchorage, from Joe Figuera. He talks a lot about student experience and how they're using XLAs in Alaska to promote good student experience. So we're going to see more and more of this expand into all sorts of other areas as well. And there's a tidal wave approaching. So if you look at the feedback from the last State of XLA, 66% of people say, yeah, we kind of get it. 43% say we're actually doing something. We're trying to put it into practice. 57% said, you know what, we've heard about it, but we're not yet implementing it. Now, that third number is incredibly interesting to us because 68% say, but we are going to be adopting within the next 18 months. And I remember the first time I got up to HDI, people had really no idea what an XLA was. And the questions I was getting is it a real thing? Is it a fad? Now people are asking me, where do we start? What training do we need? And as Jim was just explaining, HDI is one of our accredited training organizations. They do a lot of training around the practitioners, the foundations, and other work as well. So there is a tidal wave, and it's good to be riding that wave. So what makes an experience? Personalization, so trying to make the experience relevant to the individual needs and preferences. Active engagement. One of the things that I am very harsh on, and some of you may know that, is the word user and even more end user. Because end user is a term that is a carryover from the mainframe time. When you had a mainframe and you had a cable that went to a green screen 3270 terminal, and you just had an end user who had no choices and just received whatever was given, and they would just work within the framework that was determined for them. So the concept of an end user is not just a term that's frequently used, but it's also a cultural icon. When we think of end users, we don't immediately think of DevOps specialists, product designers, salespeople. And with experience management, the audience is not a passive recipient. They co-create. And so we need to try to move away from this word because I think it also limits.
I'm ready on one.
Sorry? Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
I think you're good, Alan. Someone just came off.
Oh, okay. Okay. And it has to be memorable, as I said before. We want people to leave with a lasting positive impression. And it has to be coherent. There's no point, for instance, having the world's best restaurant in terms of high-end furniture if the food isn't good. It's no good having great food and all the staff are not up to the task. And it's no good having good food on Wednesdays, but if you go on Thursdays, the food's actually not that good. So you want coherence as well between the environment, the process, the people, and consistency. The other thing that's really important for people in service management is the difference between transactions and cumulative moments over time. Why is that in Dutch? That's interesting. So we build our experiences like birds build nests. So we get these from our colleagues. We read something in a newspaper. We experience something ourselves. And from all these things, we build our memory, our impression of the experience. In service management, we've always taken the transaction as the moment of truth. So I would bet anybody on this call, if I go and look at what you're measuring, I would say 90% of you are measuring transactions. Of course, not all the people that are way ahead with me on experience management, but you're probably measuring, would you hire this agent? Did we resolve your call? Was this experience on a 1 to 10? Would you recommend? And those are all transactions. But what we know is people don't base all of their opinions off of one transaction. If they do, it's probably only the first. But after a while, especially if you are an in-house provider, you are the help desk for the company and you work for the company, they're going to base their opinions on the experience over multiple transactions. And we call that cumulative moments over time. I don't know why this is in Dutch. So I'm going to go through this, but this is an example of the service desk is a great example. So you call the service desk and you get updated on the transaction. And at the end of the transaction, you get asked what you think of it. Great stuff. But now what we're learning as we learn more and more about experience is when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I was in a workshop, I saw that Raquel is on the call, Raquel Natalie. Raquel's also been working on this project to look at how service desks can better use XLAs in the future. And one of the questions that came out of my session this week is, are you a juggler or are you a magician? So your clients, your audience wants to believe you're magicians. They want to believe when I call these people, they make problems go away. If we actually look at service desks as an example, or service support functions, they're more likely to be jugglers. They're more likely to be trying to manage a portfolio of incidents, of problems, of changes. They're more likely to be assigning categories and trying to get the right resources on the right thing and trying not to forget things. They're probably looking at a pretty good incident resolution rate and a much more sorrowful problem resolution rate. And so many of us have put ourselves into the position of being jugglers, and that's what we're measuring. We're measuring how quickly we can get things out the door, how quickly we can close things out, and we're trying to declare victory on that. Whereas our audience wants us to be magicians. And let me say what I mean by that. So this week I did this workshop to a very large insurance company, 24 billion euro, which is slightly more than $24 billion. And we looked at their incidents, problems, and changes. And when you looked at their service management statistics, they were great. NPS was good, average handling time was good, speed to resolution was good. So that all looks good. But now, then you actually go in and you look at what's happening in those incidents. And what you find is that 95% of the work they're doing is failure demand. And that failure demand isn't being captured, which basically means of all the incidents they're doing, they're all incidents that start with, I can't. And you're getting those out the door, and it's good to get them out the door, but understand that there is a circus going on here of juggling that's providing no value to the business. Because what you're doing is you're basically managing failure demand. And that's not good. Now, the interesting thing was, when you look at it, this company, these are good people. They have a good service desk. they're in the Help Desk Institute, they're in the Service Desk Institute, they're very focused on getting their certifications. But where did they go wrong? Basically with priority and category. So we found one example, and I'm just going to give you this because this was mind-blowing to me, and I've been doing this for 35 years, that one employee had entered the same incident 8 times, and it ended up in those 8 requests, those 8 comments or 8 incidents ended up in 6 different categories, and they were exactly the same, but they've been put in different categories by the team. So nobody was actually looking at the same question coming in over and over again. And the question that came in started with, I can't. And I'm wondering if for the people here, because you all are much more expert in this than I am, how much of that is happening in your organization? Which is another reason I'm saying priorities and categories have had their best day. They're not the best way of doing this. In the same way, I think the CMDB is also coming to an end of life as a concept because it's not fit for experience management. It's been a very, very loyal employee as we've tried to optimize service management, but it's not a friend if you're trying to get to experience management. And this is another reason I believe, and this is my personal opinion, I know there's 100 people, maybe some of you on this call, who don't agree. This is another reason why I think just ITSM is running out of steam. And I read every day the 10 things you can do to fix your ITSM, or the 3 mistakes everybody's making. The real mistake is that service management is designed for the service economy. And there's nothing wrong with it, except that we're no longer in it. So it's a perfect solution for a situation that no longer exists. So what does experience management mean for the organization? And there's a lot, and I'm not going to read all this to you, but you're going to get this from Jim on what's different. I'm just going to focus in on a couple of these. First of all, it changes how work is measured. In service management, where we deal with what I call fundamental excellence, right? So you need to be good at incidents and problems and changes and all of those things you need to be good at. But the value of time in service management is about optimized process flow, reduce costs, and maximize throughput. Whereas the value of time in experience management is about recognizing and optimizing the value of time for the audience. So we prioritize enlightenment and reducing anxiety. The other one is the journey view, and I just mentioned this. In service management, it's isolated transactions, and each service interaction is measured separately. And for us, it's cumulative moments. Every interaction, big or small, adds up to the overall experience over time, which means you've got to be able to have that view of what's happening. So how does work get done? Well, in the management structure, it's usually will have some form of a service management office, which is focused on process and SLA compliance. Interestingly, most service management offices do not own the processes that they measure and report on. They're owned by functional groups like network or desktop. Whereas in the experience management office, they oversee XLAs, they interpret the experience data, and they actually manage the improvements of the experience management programs. Then about the organization. Service management relies on established, predictable best practices. ITIL, COBIT, USM. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Except when you get to experience management, it tends to be too rigid. It tends to be inside out. So we prefer to work with principles, which are flexible, principle-based approach that align with changing audience needs and business priorities. And audience participation, we already talked about this. In service management, we talk about end users, and they're considered to be almost passive recipients, customers and employees as end users. We tend to look at our audience as active participants, as co-creators and shapers of their own experience. So what this means is that the movement from service to experience has cultural implications for how you manage if you're a leader, but also how your work gets done if you're a service management professional. So now let's talk about XLAs. So what is an experience level agreement? For those of you who've not had a chance to think about this, an XLA is a commitment to creating a defined experience measured by experience indicators resulting in positive business outcomes. So the first thing we all need to understand is XLA is not about touchy-feely, huggy, how does people feel? It's about getting to a positive business outcome by making sure that an experience has been designed to make people as successful as they possibly can be. XLAs are often assigned to a service offering or a theme, and you see a lot of them today in digital workplaces, onboarding. We do a lot with developer experience, and increasingly we're moving into the CX customer experience space. XLAs extend the scope of the service level agreement, and which means that service level agreements do not go away. They morph a little bit, because in a service management environment, service level agreements are the thing. They're the thing that's going to tell us whether we're doing a good job. In XLAs, they're the thing that tells us whether or not an experience is being realized, because it's dependent on aspects of the service. XLAs contain assigned data points that are measured to provide an overall experience score for the service or theme. And this allows for a quick overview of how people perceive their experience and why they feel that way about it. So an experience level agreement is different to an SLA. I hear people say, I think I can take my SLA and I can make it this. But if you're doing that, you're probably ending up with an XLA, and you might as well keep your SLAs the way they are and really create a discipline that really understands XLAs. The other big difference for those people who are new is an SLA usually remains unchanged for up to 21 years. An XLA probably won't last longer than 9 to 18 months before it has to be changed and modified. Why? Because human beings are self-programming sensors, as Sammy Callio likes to say, and which means that what I liked yesterday, I don't like anymore. I know I loved beef steak, but now I'm vegetarian. People do that. As services don't, that doesn't happen to a service or a server, but it does happen to an individual in a role. Now, how do we do this? We do this with the XLA design method, which basically starts off by saying, what's the business outcome we're looking for? So for instance, if we're looking at onboarding, maybe the most important thing is we want to select the right people, and we want them to be as productive as possible. And if you're working for a company like I did, EY measures everybody on utilization, billability, utilization. So you want people joining the firm to be utilized and preferably billable as quickly as possible, but at the right level of quality. So then we see, okay, so if that's what we want, what type of experience outcomes do we want? And we just did this with T-Mobile. One of the things that T-Mobile asks at the end of an onboarding section is, do you feel that this section is helping you to be a successful employee in the company? Now, if they say yes, then obviously we're feeling pretty good about ourselves. But if they're saying no, we want to understand why that is. So mapped to that experience ambition are sentiment indicators. Now, 9 times out of 10, they will be a survey, but they don't have to be a survey. Sentiment indicators can also be people being sick, people missing courses, people delaying the start of something, people stepping out earlier. It can also, we can also gather things from social media analytics. People are complaining through their Teams conversations, or they're going even online to Glassdoor. So there's lots of different ways we can get sentiment. Don't just get stuck on surveys. But then there's the operational indicators. Is the service that they were running on, the application that they were being onboarded on, was that available? Was it performing? And then we also look at the technical indicators, which could be your digital experience scores, your observability scores, your network scores, and you may have other things that you throw in there, like your annual CSAT, your annual Net Promoter Scores or whatever. And then you end up with some palette of measurements that help you determine why people felt the way they do. So that maps out a bit like this. So they map down, and if you see that line is drawn under sentiment. So under sentiment is really trying to understand why. Above the line is understanding how. How do they feel? And so we use, and I just mentioned some of these enquêtes, observations, forensic research. How do people feel? And then the operational tell us what was happening at the time and what was the performance. And I've got this one, and I don't know if there's anybody on here from Florida Sheriffs. We talked about this recently at the Florida Sheriffs. Florida Sheriffs spend a lot of time recruiting the right people, training the right people, and you don't want people leaving too quickly after their training because they're expensive. So one of the questions you could ask is, at the start of each shift, the police officer must have confidence that the technology available to him or her will keep him or her safe and enable them to serve and protect the public. Now, if they say yes, start of every shift, I'm super confident that everything's going to work, I'm going to be safe, and I'm going to really be in a great position to serve the public. If they say no, then we need to drill down. So is it about the technology, which is the next question? Is it that if the technology is not working, that your contact with the service desk wasn't a good use of your time? Are you not confident that the technology will function properly during the shift? And then we can drill down again, and we can go into our service management repertoire and data to see, is there any obvious reason for this? Now, if there is, then we can wipe it out and say, okay, I get that. If it is, and it's a permanent problem, we have to fix it because it's going to be a permanent dissatisfier. And when I was having these conversations, I don't think I'm giving anything away. The scariest moment for a police officer is when in the middle of the night in the dark, he pulls over a car with darkened windows and has to make a decision very quickly what the next step is going to be. And if that next step, the first step he needs or she needs is to look at the number plate and see if there's an outstanding warrant, if there's a chase going on, if there's anything else going on. If they don't have that information available or not available in a timely fashion, that's a big issue. That's a big issue. And it's a technology issue that's not allowing them to function properly during their shift because they don't feel safe. And therefore, they can't protect the public. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I wanted to show you the Gardner one here. So Stu Downs, who's one of the Gardner analysts, and we've done a lot of work with Gardner over the last 7-8 months. And he created this, and I thought it was nice. And he sent this to me and said, no penguins were harmed in this analogy. So let's talk about SLAs. So an SLA defines a level of service between the provider and the consumer, including performance metrics, responsibilities, and remedies for unmet expectations. But the penguins disappointed the SLA because the SLA says we will distribute fish to 85% of penguins within 15 minutes of joining the queue. That isn't going down so well. So am I in the 85%? Am I in the 15 minutes? Am I in the right place in the queue? So let's talk about XLAs. XLAs aim to capture a comprehensive view of the employee experience by integrating metrics, including performance, service quality, and employee sentiment. So Gardner and the Institute are pretty much on the same page. Penguin experience are good because 95% of penguins report feeling satisfied, well-fed, and not stressed after receiving their fish. And I love this because it's so simple. Everybody gets it. The fact that you're in a queue and there is a KPI for the queue doesn't necessarily make you feel any good about whether that KPI is being measured or not. Obviously, there are 5% of penguins that we have to worry about here because they're obviously not in the success group. But the most important thing for us to understand, especially if we are the World Wildlife Fund, is that 95% of penguins are being well fed and they're not stressed. And that's not coming from a service level agreement the way they're written today. Okay. Now, in order to help you get started and to work with this, we've created it's now called the Experience Journey Framework, which since recently. And so we do the Enlighten, and we work with you with tools and training. And if you're doing the foundation class, you'll learn all about these things to Enlighten, which is basically when you start. And I think if Raquel's still on the call, get a chance to talk to her, because we underestimated just how hard it was to be successful in the Enlighten phase. You want everybody to get behind it, everybody to understand why we're doing it. And you want people to have realistic expectations of how fast and how deep you can go, especially when you start out. Then we do the Explore phase, and we call that Experience Now. So where are you now? Think about it as a GPS. When you turn a GPS on in your car, the first thing it says is you are here. And if you are not where it thinks you are, then it doesn't matter where you want to go. It's going to be difficult to get that route planned. So know where you are. And then the next phase is if we know where we are and we know what people need and we know what experience we want to design, let's envision it. Let's know where we're going. And just like a GPS, you've got to tell it where you want to go and what type of route you want to take. Do you want to take the fast route, the toll route, the scenic route? And so you've envisioned what your XLA is going to look like. And then you go to enable it. And enable is exactly what I just described on that XLA design method. What data do I need? How am I going to weight that data? When am I going to get that data? Where am I going to get it from? Do I have access to the data? I mean, I've been to customers who only have a single source of data, and they have to do as much as they can with that. But I've also been with large organizations that have ServiceNow and Nexthink and Happy Signals and a whole bunch of data that they can bring in. But then you create your XLAs and you put them into production. And execution is when you also build your experience management organization. So these are the specialists who are going to manage this, report on this, and analyze the data that comes back.
A police complaint.
Huh?
I thought I'll file a police complaint. You weren't included.
Okay? Can't see this, bro.
They will say they will not come.
No.
They'll
Sorry.
say that fellow has been hijacked by Nexthink.
You're coming off of mute.
Okay. So when I go to embrace, that's the last phase. That's when you bring it all back and you bring it all back to the organization and start to think about how we're going to act on this, which could mean an enhanced one or a completely new ambition that we've got to create new XLAs, which could be in other areas of the business we serve. It could be just an enhancement of what we've done. Now we know better. Okay. So what's the role of the Institute in your journey? Well, basically it's four things. Knowledge facilitation. So we do a lot of work around the courseware. Jim just mentioned it. We have the foundationers, so the practitioners. We also have something called XLA in a day. And we do research. And one of the researches some of you may have seen is around the enlightened executive. Because what we've also seen is in order to do experience management, you need to have an enlightened executive who is going to support you in your efforts. And so we did research on what does that enlightened executive look like? What percentage are there? If I was looking for one, how would I spot one? And if I wanted to be one, what are the characteristics I should be developing? We also do community building, very similar to HDI, meetups, events. We have standard reviews. So when we launch a standard, and I've listed 3 underneath, we always do that with the members. So anytime we decide we need to do a new standard or certification, then we put that in front of the members, get the feedback, make sure that that works. We do the research topics and we produce quite a number of white papers. No different to HDI in that respect, I think. We also provide strategic support, but only for members, which are things like we participate in steering committees. and we provide guardrails, especially if you have multiple players in that ecosystem. So that's a limited thing. We don't really do advice or consulting. We don't have the bandwidth for that. And then the last thing, of course, is the standards and certification. So we just launched the experience management model. It's being renamed, and we just issued the verified status to, I think it's 13 companies now have the XLA verified status. So as most of them are MSPs or ISVs, we have 2 customer organizations that are verified, and we expect that to continue to grow. We are starting a conversation now about a new standard for the Experience Management Center, which is essentially the tool set that you can either compose or build to support XLA and XMO management. And some of you may have seen, we're also very heavily involved in the NEN ISO norm. So there's going to be ISO 20018, which is going to include experience management for the first time. Now, we don't own that, but we do contribute to that standards committee who are developing that. So, welcome to the Experience Economy. It's a brand new day. I want to thank Jim and the team for supporting this effort. We want to collaborate with HDI. We're actually, I don't know if Jim wanted to mention that, we do have an agreement with HDI for a reduced membership fee for people who are HDI members. There's an opportunity to join the Institute at a heavily reduced fee. We're very interested in inviting you to explore and innovate. And I think my message for you, all of you, is there's an amazing growth opportunity and career opportunity here as the experience economy expands, and also the application of experience management at scale comes to fruition. And by doing all of that, we hope to help you become guardians of the human experience of, I've got healthcare products, as the one I did this morning, of digital products. Okay, then I am done with my presentation. And I can
Thank you
hand it
so
back
much,
to you.
Alan, for that enlightening presentation. It certainly makes me hungry to learn more. Would like to mention that there's excellent experience management training, as Alan has mentioned, on the HDI website, as well as the XLA Institute website has outstanding information and resources. And let's open it up to questions with the couple of minutes that we have left here. Feel free to jump in or submit your question in the chat.
If you have any questions, I'm glad to have them.
Here we go. I don't see questions in chat yet.
There you go.
While we're waiting for questions, I just want to say thank you so much, Alan. This is an exciting opportunity for the IT service and support community to get a better handle on sentiment of employees and customers. Employee experience is so critical for talent retention, as you know, and of course, optimizing client experience is critical for long-term relationships. And I think this experience economy provides outstanding opportunities for growth and enhancement to our service management offerings. So thank you so much for elaborating on that.
And one thing I would say, Jim, which I think is important, is that we always talk about the audience, you know, our employees, but there also needs to be space to care for the care workers, the people actually at the service desk. And one of the things I'm a strong advocate for is to make sure that we're also measuring the experience of people on a service desk in a service support function. Because I think sometimes we underestimate how much pressure there is working under those conditions. And so I'm very much in favor of looking at XLA's to care for the care workers, if you will.
It's a great point. We've got a couple of questions here. I remember you mentioned that large insurance company that was spending 95% managing a failure demand. A question comes in. What do you think XLA how it plays into problem management?
Yeah, see now, so problem management is an interesting thing because when you start to analyze the data and you look at it through an experience lens, you find a huge bucket of unresolved issues in problem management. And part of that is, and again, everybody's a little bit different. Part of it is the skill set for addressing problem management is scarce. And so, and also just naturally, we always tend to prioritize on failure demand. It's more pressing. And so things like problem management tends to waste away a little bit. But for me, I think I'm almost at the point that incident and problem may not be helpful. Because if you look at, same with priorities and categories, if you see that your P1s are all being resolved very quickly, and your P8s, there are thousands and thousands of them, and I do not exaggerate, Jim, I've seen organizations where there are thousands untouched. They're going to become a problem, and they are really still a business problem. I think every incident, every problem, and every change represents a barrier for the business. And so we need to really rethink this. And I think we've set ourselves up with the focus on incident. We do have triage methods, but I don't think people are looking at this in terms of value for the business. I think there's a leadership question, and I think there's a talent question as well. But XLAs definitely, because XLAs are not about incidents and problems, right? XLAs are about what you've promised the audience.
Understood. What are the ways to measure XLAs beyond CSAT and NPS in a monopolized environment such as higher ed IT with limited social media offerings?
Oh, I think there's great work done here. If you look at the work, I know the work that Joe Fragera has been doing at the University of Alaska. He's got great figures on this. I think he's going to be presenting at Service Management World. I'm pretty certain he will be. Go ask him because he's got great data on, and it depends on the higher ed, right? Because I worked with EDUCAUSE, and one of the things I found, because I'm not an educational person, is that universities tend to fall into two categories. Either they care deeply about their faculty, like Stanford or Chicago or Harvard, and I wouldn't say they don't care about the students, but the students are going to come anyway as long as the faculty is good. And you've got other ones like Mount Holyoke who really care deeply about the students. They want to make sure every student that starts finishes. And so when you get to the XLA, those are the things that you're measuring: student welfare, and ultimately what the business benefit is of having a good faculty could be a relationship to research funding, to programs that you can run, to prestigious, to citation indexes. Whereas if you're looking at the students, you are looking at completion rates, satisfaction rates, dropout rates. Those are the things that you're going to be measuring in higher ed.
Excellent. And you're answering multiple questions at the same time, which is helpful because we're running out of time. But you did comment on this earlier, but for organizations that are starting brand new into XLA, what is your guidance in terms of how they should start, where they should start?
Well, I would always start with something that is an issue. I think the thing that was a wow moment for me this week, and Raquel, I'm talking about Learn, Inspire, Deliver. I had never understood this whole concept of failure demand. And shame on me, having been in this business for so long, I've never seen a succinct discovery of existing data to surface that. that's what we're doing. We're doing failure demand. That's outrageous. That was my reaction, right? So I think start there and see just what's going on with your failure demand, because you may even be able to make tweaks and modifications in your service management system. If your service management system runs on priority and category, I'm almost prepared to put money on it that you have a too high a version of failure demand. So that's a trigger. And you can actually put productivity numbers to that. You solve failure demand, not only do you improve the service to the business, you reduce your costs and you free up people to actually do value demand. And that's really what everybody wants to be doing. Now, there are people who are just happy closing calls. There are always going to be people who get their kicks from firefighting. But for most of us, we want to add value to the business. And so understanding failure demand, and you're in the best place to do it. If you're in a service support function, you are absolutely the best person to analyze failure demand. If you want to know more about that, reach out to me, because I really do think this is going to be a huge theme in the next year. Now we know this. Now we have this method for identifying it.
Excellent. Thank you, Alan. And the gentleman you mentioned earlier, there's a link in chat regarding a presentation being delivered at Service Management World.
Yep. And Joe's great. Joe is and Joe is actually, just so you know, Joe is heading up the higher ed chapter for XLA Institute. So he's absolutely the right person to chat with.
Outstanding. We're about 6 minutes after, but interest is high, and we probably have time for one more
If you
question.
don't have to go, I've got a few minutes anyway. That's fine.
Okay. In the example you used of Starbucks, for companies that put so much time and effort into product standardization, how do you move them to embrace the mindset of being open to changing from a product focused to more of a customer sentiment focused approach?
Anybody who knows me knows I'm obsessed with Starbucks. And Jim and Brian Nichol, who's the current CEO, he came in and he said, you know, all this optimization, guys, it's killing us. It's absolutely killing us. We're automating the hell out of the baristas. They have no engagement with the customer anymore. They're just pumping out stickers. Nobody's talking to anybody. And that's not what people come to Starbucks for. So he dialed all of that back. He doubled the number of baristas. He also gave them more time. He took out a lot of the clunky drinks, you know, like the chocolate frappuccino with mango and God knows what not that takes 5 hours to make. So he took all of that out. And he's also redesigning the Starbucks itself to be more of an experience. Now he has, and this is what I love, and I'm sorry if I go overboard on this. He translates his strategy into very human-centric things. So he says to his people, team, we need to win back the morning. How do we win back the morning? So he looks at that and he looks at it holistically. What does that mean for our environment? What type of people do we want to see in the morning? What type of foods do we want to be offering to those people? What type of music works better in the morning? So he's really doing this. Now, where do XLAs fit in this? Because Starbucks knows much, much more about how to build a better Starbucks than I do. Where Starbucks struggles, like everybody, is how do I now do that in 42,000 stores around the world across time zones? And that's where your XLA starts to fit in, because now you've got a measurement system for experience at scale. And so, yes, the great designer has done their work, but does that design work in Delhi as well as it works in London? And when is that experience perishable? When is it stopped? When is it no longer working that we need to inject something into it? So that's how Brian Nichols doing it. It's difficult time because the United States is quite turbulent right now with all of our tariffs and discussions. So, but he is doing better, and the reason people are giving him the benefit of the doubt is because of the work he did turning around Chipotle. Basically, he did the same thing there.
Certainly an exciting road ahead for Starbucks in a 180-degree shift in strategy, as they were initially going in a direction of
optimization,
turning over basically takeout service and transaction oriented, and now going back to a venue where customers want to be in the morning and to stay there, bring their friends, more of that
And he's even
experience.
shutting down, just so you know, and maybe you already do, he's actually shutting down the Starbucks that are just drive-through. He's not doing it anymore. He's like, if people are only coming to drive-through Starbucks, I'm not interested. Go somewhere else. They have to come in the store. Let's find ways to keep them in the store. Let's make it fun for them, whether they're coming with. I mean, I live in Florida, so I have lots of older people that come in the morning and they sit there for hours. But then you get the mothers with the kids coming in. They come in for hours. There are people like me sitting there for hours just working at our own little desk, and he's got it all figured out. And I really, really wish him the best.
Yeah, I salute his efforts. I'm excited about the changes.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much, Alan, again for your time and sharing your wisdom. Look forward to the next opportunity we have to get together, and the service management world is going to be a great event. Thank you to our audience, and thank you so much to our sponsors. I will be posting the presentations as well as this recording on the HDICFL.com website, and that'll be within 24 hours. Thank you so much again. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.